Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the security news update for the week ending May 8th, 2022. So first thing is quantum computing, hot button these days. There was an executive order issued under the previous administration. It's been replaced by a new executive order telling agencies to start planning for actually deploying quantum resistant encryption. Here's the problem you've got, and the problem affects everybody. Anything that is encrypted now with traditional public key encryption is likely to be breakable when quantum computing at scale becomes reasonable. That could be, we don't know, that could be a year, 2 years, 3 years, not very long. The bad guys are capturing encrypted traffic, knowing that they will be able to go off and decrypt it later. And those bad guys are both state-sponsored bad guys and other bad guys. So the challenge is we can't wait to start encrypting things with quantum resistant encryption, hoping that a quantum computer at scale is not going to be available for a while, because they'll just go back and take the stuff that they've already stolen and decrypt it. And that's obviously problematic for any number of reasons. So the part of what they're supposed to do under this new executive order is start inventorying everything that's going to need to be replaced. And you think about it, right? It's every web server, every piece of security software, every network attached storage. It all has to be either upgraded or replaced depending on whether the manufacturer chooses to do that or not choose to do that. It all has to be replaced. So the first thing, and I think this is a good thing for private companies to do too. First thing to do is to go off and start building an inventory. And I mean everything, whether it's an HVAC controller or whether it's the nuclear launch codes. You just need to understand it. You can decide where you're going to upgrade later, but the first thing is understanding what needs to be upgraded. And that's every single bit of hardware and software that uses encryption is going to need to be reworked. So that's number one. And then, then we'll have to figure out, well, how much of this is actually upgradable and how much of it just needs to be crushed in the junk pile. We don't know that. There's also as part of this announcement this week, a National Quantum Initiative Advisory Committee. This is going to be comprised of a bunch of govies and about 25 folks from private industry. And they need to provide reports back to the president. I mean, there's a lot of reporting going on here. So these guys are starting to get serious about it. They know that that this is going to take a while. This could take years, literally years, for people to fix. Don't assume that that just because NIST releases and they're supposed to release candidate quantum encryption resistant algorithms soon, like in the next few months. But that doesn't mean anybody's actually got any working code, or the working code doesn't have bugs in it, or the working code will work reasonably fast. But at least it's something to go play with. And you can look at it and see whether it's something you can actually deploy. So, that's kind of what's going on in the quantum spectrum. And I think that's pretty important. Next, CISA released, again, part of the executive order, Secure Cloud Business Applications, that's CBA, Technical Reference Architecture. And this is again a draft document. The comments are still open for, I think, about a week or so. But this is kind of giving government agencies for Office 365 and Google Workspace recommended best practices for how to go off and build secure applications. So while private industry is not required to follow this, CISA did a fair amount of work building this thing. They're calling it SCUBA because everything has to have a pretty acronym. Spent a fair amount of work doing this. And I would say, reading that and thinking about it and considering what their recommendations are, that would be a good thing for every single company. Next, on the legal front, and we got a bunch of things on the legal front this week. There are now 5 states who have passed privacy laws. We have a page on the blog site for laws and bills. It's the blog address, cybersecurity-mitch-tanenbaum-blog.com/laws. And I have the details of the Connecticut law there, along with a link to the text of it. So that's now 5, California, Virginia, Colorado, Utah, and Connecticut. And I anticipate there's going to be more, maybe even this year. I mean, it's certainly possible there could be more this year. The legislative season is pretty much over, but you never can tell. There could be a dark horse in this thing. So we could see a 6th one this year. But, you know, what happens now, you know, these things go into effect next year, and companies are going to need to figure out, well, exactly how are they going to play with this? What's the plan? What's the strategy? And if you need help with that, we'd be happy to go do that. Next on the legal front, dark patterns. And somehow I missed this one. I don't know exactly how I did, but effective January 1st of this year, Colorado now has a law for companies selling to Colorado consumers. It's designed to reduce the stress of dark patterns, automatic renewals, and stuff like that. Companies that make it hard to cancel automatic renewal. They just had to deal with one of those today, personally. So you know, this is probably going to be a sample for other states, I would expect. And you know, you might want to look at what you're doing and see whether it meets the Colorado law, and you know, just do that everywhere. The Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC, is about doubling the size of their cryptocurrency fraud unit. Now, before you go panic here, we went from like 30 to 50, so it's not exactly huge, but still, you know, they say that they have taken 80 enforcement actions so far, and they recovered $2 billion. So, you know, that's not shabby. And if you double the size of that, maybe they can find some more money. So, you know, given we're talking about hundreds of billions in fraud, you know, a few billion here, a few billion, I'll take it, you know. So, you know, whatever, but certainly a good thing to do. And the last thing in the legal section is the president signed a new bill into law called the Better Cybercrime Metrics Act. Now, this doesn't actually do anything to fix cybercrime, but the challenge we have is, you know, and you've seen this, you know, the numbers for what the actual cybercrime numbers are all over the ballpark. So what they're trying to do is get people being law enforcement, and in particular federal law enforcement, to do a better job of reporting cybercrime. They're also asking other agencies and local law enforcement to report it. This law does not require that; it just encourages that. It also requires the National Academies of Science to create a taxonomy, which is a great thing because we can't even have common names for these things. So, and they also want the Department of Justice and the Census to start collecting data in their annual surveys that they collect. So all of this is good in terms of actually getting a little bit better handle on, you know, what the crime is, what it looks like, and how much of it is. It will not do anything, unfortunately, to reduce cybercrime, not yet. Here's a great guide from NIST under education, NIST SP 800-40. This is in revision 4 now. The last one was about 10 years ago, but it's really pretty brief. It's about 20 pages if you cut out the boilerplate. And it says, you know, here's some recommendations in terms of what companies should do and what they should consider in terms of building their patch management strategy. So this is not about here's a great tool to use or anything like that. This is about building a strategy. And even if you don't drink the entire pitcher of Kool-Aid in here, there's lots of good stuff in it. I recommend everybody read it if you are responsible for patching, or your people are responsible for patching. In the breaches section, we have, of course, everybody. International Car Rental Company Sixt. They have about 2,000 locations in like 100 countries. and they do car rental, ride sharing, ride hailing. They do a bunch of stuff. They shut down most of their systems in late April, but left a few critical business systems up. But the German media reported that most of the car bookings they saw were being done with a pen and paper. So I'm not exactly sure what they left up, but apparently it wasn't a whole lot. So they are not providing any more information. I'm sure they're still trying to figure out what's going on. But this is a big deal, and they got a lot of information on a lot of people. So I'm sure we'll find out when they disclose things later how bad this is. We don't know. And then next, respiratory care provider, SuperCare Health, not so good. So the breach was discovered last July, but they claimed they couldn't figure out what was taken until this February. So, that's like a year after the breach actually happened. They didn't notify the patients until March. Doesn't seem like this is terribly HIPAA compliant, but we'll find out why. And why did it take 6 months to figure out what was taken? And I think that's a good thing for all companies. How long would it take you if you found hackers inside your organization? Do you even have enough log data to go figure out what was taken? And if you do, how long would it take you to figure it out? Remember that a lot of companies now, federal, and financial services, critical infrastructures, have to report within a couple of days of breaches. So there's going to be people breathing down your throat between 3 days, let's say, if that's when you report the breach, and 6 months when you say, oh, here's what we figured out what they took. So I would say if you don't have a good handle on that, your log data is not good, your log data is not offsite, then you really need to kind of up your game there. Russia has come up with an interesting cure for their cyber talent shortage. I would call it a desperate play on their part. I think that's probably what it is. Tens of thousands of Russians with IT expertise, cyber expertise, have been leaving the country. Anybody basically who has the ability to leave and has a skill is leaving, going someplace, and they're feeling the pain, in terms of running the government, in terms of running private companies, and in terms of protecting themselves from the hackers that are pretty successfully attacking them. So their idea, Putin's idea, is he's going to go off and pay the guys who are in jail who have hacking skills something like $300 a month to go protect the businesses and government agencies. Now, I'm sure these guys will be thrilled, instead of making, say, $1 million a year, to make $300 a month from old Vlad there. And I'm sure they wouldn't do anything bad. I'm sure that's definitely not even on the radar screen. This is truly a desperate play on his part, and I think it's probably going to backfire. But he's got his back against the wall, and the talent is fleeing, and they got to try to keep things together. This will set them back quite a ways. And there aren't. I mean, how many hackers do they actually have in jail? So, if they're losing, let's say they're losing, 5 to 10,000 a month, that's been going on for a couple of months. So maybe they've lost 25, 50, 100,000 skilled IT folks. They don't have that many skilled IT folks in jail, I don't think. So next is the Secure Software Development Framework Program. So it's now law, effective last week. So if you sell into the feds, either commercial software or custom software, you must have a secure software development program. The feds have created a template for one, and I suggest that you use their template. You don't have to, but on the other hand, if you don't, you're probably going to have to explain to somebody at some point in time why you think you're smarter than NIST and CISA are. And I think that could be a hard sell. So if you don't have a secure software development program and you're selling software that you create, commercial software, COT software, or GOT software or custom software, now's the time to go off and get your secure software development program in place. And this has been a busy week for documentation. NIST has released a new supply chain risk guide. This one, unlike the other guide I was talking about a minute ago, was 20 pages. This one is not light reading. This is over 300 pages, but it's got some good stuff in it. And unless you don't have a supply chain, and I don't know anybody that doesn't, you need to think about the risk to your supply chain as a result of what's going on. So anyway, that's another thing that's in this week's roundup. And then last is the security news bites. A jury just found Norton willfully infringed on 2 Columbia University patents. This is a case that goes back to 2013. And the result of this is that Norton is been fined $171 million. They could be on the hook for treble damages because this is willful infringement, supposedly. I'm sure they will appeal, but in the meantime, they've stopped doing the things that are infringing, which is a smart move because damages continue to accrue as long as they don't do that. And they're going to have to go off and change the way their software works. So expect to see new versions of Norton, which I am sure they will say are wonderfully better, but are certainly different and hopefully don't infringe on the patents. A data broker was called out last week for selling location data of people who visited Planned Parenthood. You can imagine why they might be interested in selling that. A security magazine bought that data for a small window of time. I forget how long it was, a week or something. It cost them $160. So any nutcase could go off and afford this data from the data broker. And it included data like where the people came from before they went to Planned Parenthood, like their office or their house, and where they went to after they left Planned Parenthood. But it's all anonymous, so you don't have to worry about that, right? Assume that there's going to be nut jobs who are going to be buying this data and trading it on the dark web and using it for illegal purposes. One company, after they got outed, the next day they said, "Oh, we're not going to sell this data anymore. We didn't understand both." And then the day after, another data broker, who was also selling that same data, also said they're going to stop. But there's thousands of these data brokers, so yeah, maybe some of the more reputable ones, if you can use reputable and data broker in the same sentence, are going to stop selling it. But there'll be easy places to get that. Moral of the story: if you're worried about your personal safety, leave your phone at home. Or power it off, one or the other. Cryptocurrency projects, they're going down in flames. There's another $100 million hack week for, I think, 3, 4, 5 different cryptocurrency projects. These guys, it's software. Software has bugs. And these guys are throwing software together as fast as they can. They're not worried about security. Until, of course, they get hacked. And then, 10, 15, 70, $100 million later, they go, "Oh, I think we have a problem." And of course, they're not providing any insurance. There is no federal insurance like there is on a bank account. So, you're kind of at the mercy of whether these guys have deep backers that are willing to go off and fork up 10, 20, $50 million to make whole people who got hacked as a result of these guys' bad software practices. Don't know. But I wouldn't bet the rent money on that. Some will and a lot won't. And a lot of them will go into bankruptcy and close and shut down, and people will lose all their money. So just a word to the wise. Ukrainians have figured out an interesting way to hurt Russia. Apparently, there is an agency that people who sell alcohol, wholesale and retail, have to go through, and they have managed to take that down. And as a result, stores can't receive new shipments, factories can't sell stuff, they can't receive tankers of raw material. So kind of the booze business is on hold in Russia until they get their act back together. It's an interesting attack vector. And I think it's, just a death by 1,000 cuts. It's not meant to, single-handedly do anything, but, it's just one more thing, no more booze. Spain, this is not so good, has admitted that it hacked some of its own politicians' phones. And these are from both the prime minister, I think, and the defense minister were hacked. Now, these are not guys that they're admitting were hacked, but they clearly were. And then some of the folks in the Catalan region of Spain, the separatist region, the government said they hacked those politicians. And they said, no, this is all legal. It's all legal, not a problem. We got a warrant and everything. But if you're in any kind of sensitive position, you should assume that your phones are not secure, and that includes, by the way, even if you're using secure messaging software, that doesn't make any difference. If your phone's hacked, your phone's hacked. And last, this is kind of why did it take so long kind of thing. The Treasury is sanctioning cryptocurrency mixer Blender. These are guys that try to take whole bunches of cryptocurrency transactions, blend them together, and make it hard to figure out where they went on the end of it. Nothing's impossible, but it certainly does make things more difficult. The problem is there's thousands of these guys. So sanctioning one of them just means people need to move to a different one. Great. What difference does that make? But this is kind of like the whack-a-mole game. It's really a challenge, and the feds are at least working at it. But whack-a-mole is whack-a-mole, no matter what you do. So if anybody needs any assistance, please give us a shout. And until next week, thank you for listening.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.